Baby, I don't like it in here.
Hey, what's the matter with you?
Where did you go?
Wild. Put your soul into it. Wild. What's going on around you?
And welcome to Haunting Live podcast this week. Thank you very much for tuning in here on our YouTube channel. And this week we have a very special guest and a very special bonus episode for you guys. And our guest is coming all the way from Australia this week, the farthest guest we've ever had. So we'll get to her in a moment. But thank you very much for tuning in this week. And thank you for subscribing to our YouTube channel. If you haven't yet, just hit that subscribe button. And also don't forget to like this video. This week we do welcome our special guest all the way from Australia. She is known as Revealing Light Tarot, Marianne. She's going to be joining us here, and let's bring her on in.
Hello, Trevor. How are you? And thanks for having me on.
Yes, thank you very much for joining us here on Haunting Live Podcast. I appreciate you taking your time out of your schedule to join us, especially being so far away. And being able to connect like this is pretty cool. So you're basically a tarot reader. You do a lot of readings on your channel on YouTube. So I'm a follower of yours, and I like your work quite a bit. So it's a pleasure to have you on this week.
Oh, thank you. Being located in Australia, we've got a natural symmetry with Canadians. We're all part of the Commonwealth, but we've got a lot of similarities in our values and our lifestyles. And a lot of Australians travel through Canada, and I think likewise as well. So be good when our borders open up again and we can do a bit more of that.
Yeah, it would be. Unfortunately, I know you guys are still stuck in lockdown. You've had some severe cases of COVID and stuff in your area, so we wish you the best of luck in recovery, and we hope you get out of lockdown soon as well. So,
thank you, Trevor. I have to say, Australians have been doing it really tough. I want to say that it's kind of, I've got a certain percentage of Australians that follow my channel, and I hear them when they say that they've been separated from loved ones for so long now, and it's a little bit tough for Australians. So if any Australians are watching this, I just know that by the end of this year, things are going to start to improve for us.
yeah, well, we wish you the best of luck, and we definitely hope you guys come out of lockdown and are able to get out and do the things you want to do. So, but today we're here to talk to you about your career and what you do with tarot. So you're calling your channel Revealing Light Tarot. How did that name come about?
Yeah, well, I started off as Revealing Light Tarot. I've moved more over the last 4 years. I've moved into astrology and spiritualism, more so. In a way, spiritualism goes back to my roots because that's where I started as a young child. I saw patterns forming in what I didn't know. I didn't know what they were. Like a vibrational kind of thing. The things you see on my channel now, the orbs, the almost like spirit is wanting to apparate here. On my website, there is a winged orb that I've put on the landing page, or a link to on the landing page. Very clearly documents what would be an elemental or an angelic type spirit, starting from behind in these curtains, flying over and landing in my tarot cards. That is there and visible for everybody to see. It's quite clearly a winged elemental, angelic type of presence. These are quite common in my videos. They're quite common off screen for me to see and experience. In fact, some days they're so active that I can see them shooting off my actual physical body. this takes me back to, as I said, very young, when I was very young, and I just didn't understand what was happening. I've always been pretty, able to predict, knowing what's going to happen before it will happen, but not having any frame of reference for that, not knowing what to do with it. So there's orbs here right now, but and I hope that you'll be able to see them. Sometimes you will during a recording, sometimes you won't. It's not as if they're on tap and they'll just appear magically. They will come probably when you're least expecting it. But yeah, suffice to say, I suppressed all that stuff as a kid. But I always had a natural bent toward learning about the esoteric, learning about the spiritual, learning about occult matters. And so I'm a natural learner, being a Sagittarian. And so I put my mind to learning about things like ley lines, about energy grids, about, the work of people like Nikola Tesla. Even delving into who and what the Masons were, all of those subjects fascinated me, as well as being very drawn to mediumship work and reading and learning from mediums. And I've done a lot of work in the last 4 years. It's been an accelerated catch up for me. And I've worked with some pretty good evidentiary mediums to learn, to hone what I get, to hone my clairvoyance, to clear audience as well. So it's been a big journey for me in the last 4 years, but it was one that I had to make.
So had this only started in the past 4 years, or were you, as a child, did you have any abilities back then as well, or?
As a child, I can remember seeing, some people would call them ghosts, patterns of energy, the kinds of things, as I said, orbs, feeling spirit very close around me. And I think when you don't know what's going on, and this is probably a cautionary tale for explorers, paranormal explorers generally, if you go in with fear, you can misinterpret what you're seeing or what you're hearing through the lens of fear. And so I was fearful of this because I didn't know at a very personal level. I could read all the books in the world, but a very personal experience-based level, I had shut that out. I'd shut that out. So needing to be mentored by some really good mediums was very important. And so in 2015, I went through a life-threatening, life-changing cancer journey. And I knew once I'd gone through that, my spirit was so active during those 3 or 4 years of treatment, chemotherapy, radiation, surgeries, recovery, rehabilitation. Spirit was everywhere, and it was the thing that I clung to. It was like all of a sudden a portal had opened up for me in 2015. It had always been there, but it had to be my decision to actively interrelate, communicate with that portal. So once that was done, I knew that there was a purpose that I had to follow. So I left a orthodox managerial type career and moved into this kind of work, and hence that's when I started my channel. I had been reading tarot for family, friends, personally since I was 23 years of age. So I knew that was the first thing I gravitated toward because I was familiar with tarot. But I have since, I've always had that clairvoyance happening. In fact, when I was very, very young, I described it to a teacher because I didn't, again, you've got to understand that here was this small child that had no frame of reference to what was going on with them. And I wrote, I'm a writer as well, and I wrote down what I was experiencing. I described a trance. I described going somewhere else. And And she put that down to a very vivid imagination. And they always said that about me. She has a very vivid imagination. I became known as the girl with the vivid imagination. Of course, in hindsight, what that was clairvoyance.
Yeah, it does sound like clairvoyance, and you definitely have some clear ability since you're sensing energies and stuff while you're going through treatments for sure. And sounds like you had a rough time with your treatments, but hopefully that's all in your past
Yes.
now.
Yeah, look, it's in terms of astrology, it was all there in my natal chart. The lessons that I chose to learn this lifetime, it was all there. Had I known about astrology, because I've been studying astrology fairly closely now for the 4 years, as I said, this is just like being, deciding to do what I was here to do. All of that is in my natal chart. If I had known back then what I didn't know now, I would have probably. There were big lessons for me around health and work and being a workaholic and, being a bit more discerning, setting boundaries, all of those things. So my life lessons sort of culminated in, cancer wards are full of the most, the kindest people who need to set boundaries and say no. The beautiful thing around that time was Spirit walked very closely with me that entire time, very closely.
Did you find that you made a connection to your spirit guides at that time? Were they guiding you along as well?
My my biggest connections are with my I guess my passed over loved ones. So I have parents and a sibling and grandparents in spirit, and they are around me a lot, and that's a beautiful thing for me because I was obviously I obviously miss them, but they are here. They walk with me in dreams. They were even there in the twilight world of anesthetic during an operation. Again, that astral plane, that astral level is very close in my day-to-day consciousness. As for my spirit guides, there is an elderly man, a learned monk type of person that mediums will see around me, and he is very much a spirit guide. That higher learning, that astrology, that bent that I have toward searching, exploring through metaphysical knowledge, certainly that guide is there helping me do that.
Yeah, that's great that you can connect with your guides. Was it something easy for you to do at that time, or was it something you had to learn yourself to do?
This is going to sound really strange, but I've always felt the presence of my guardian angel. Now, that people will go, angels, what are you talking about? This is kind of a religious concept, but whatever you want to call it, some people might call that a spirit guide, but I do feel this is more like an angelic energy. I've felt that around me all my life. I think that kind of knowledge, knowing that, sensing that energy, that benign, it's good energy around you, whatever you want, whatever name you want to call it, allows me to go into territory, maybe take, I don't know if it's a risk, but understand that when I do open up that portal, I do so in safety. I do so with protection. And again, without fear. Sometimes I can not understand the realms to which I extend out to, but I always have that anchor through that benign energy around me that has been there all my life. Yeah.
And so then at what point did you start teaching yourself or learning the art of tarot was at some point in your life as well that you decided to go into that path? Or
I think people who are spiritual, or people who have a natural, well, everyone has a clairvoyant or a psychic ability, but those of us that were meant to work with it are naturally drawn toward esoteric type of places and situations. And I remember I lived at as a younger person, young adult, I lived very close to King's Cross, which is actually in Sydney. It can be quite a dangerous area. But I walked into a shop in King's Cross. It was like had dusty benches, and it was like the shop that time forgot. And there was this Aquarian deck, a tarot deck there. And I still got that deck, and I picked that up and started learning tarot back then. But I think, yeah, my dreamscape, I've delved very, very around that time, very deeply into dream interpretation, and also communicating in that dreamscape. So that's always felt very, very natural to me. Unfortunately, I had a dream, not last night, but the night before, that Joe Biden had a close shave with an attempt on him. I hope to goodness he was okay, but it took some. He was protected ultimately by his Secret Service, but those sort of dreams are unsettling. I guess the biggest thing that I'm grappling with now is not all predictions that I bring forward are going to be heard or received well, and so I have to go back to the reason why I'm doing this and go, well, do you want to just hold people's hands and give them perhaps not very authentic things, or do you actually want to make those predictions that you're given? And it's a big decision for me to make, because on social media you get a lot of blowback when you're delivering something that people don't want to hear. So there's a new trajectory for the work that I do on my channel coming up in the future, and I'm really thinking hard and long about where I want to take this work, where I want to take this clairvoyance and mediumship and tarot and divination. Yeah,
that's going to be my next question as well. So you do your work for your channel, but do you also do work for private clients as well? Do you do like readings day to day as well?
Yeah, I did in the first couple of years post-cancer in 2015, but I produce a lot of video, and I was just becoming worn out, and so I had to really put some boundaries around what I could deliver for people while still, so I chose to go into more video production. I run a Patreon channel, which I produce separate content for. I produce a lot of content on YouTube. I have a Facebook platform, and my website, because I have been trained as a writer through the vivid imagination. That's where they steered me. Probably rightly so. The orthodox teachers steered me into studying writing and making a career as a writer. I run a blog on my website. So there's a lot of work that I do without taking, I'd have to drop something to go back to private readings. Yeah, and maybe that's what I'll do in the future. But right now, the accent is on production. Yeah, video production.
Yeah, for sure. It's hard to keep everything in line to make sure you're focused on the right area that you're meant to be. So, but it sounds like you have a lot of different avenues open to you.
Yeah, being diversified has always been important to me. So you don't get bogged down, so that you can remain fresh, so that you can remain in that state of forward momentum not stale or stagnant or whatever. So that's in my chart too. Yeah.
Yeah, speaking of your chart, you were mentioning that earlier. When did you get involved in astrology, and what does that do for you?
Yeah, it's like seeing a blueprint of universal law, LORE. It is it's incredible astrology. It's mind-boggling how accurate astrology can be. When I started my channel, I was lucky enough to be mentored by an astrologer in the States. And she suddenly, well, not suddenly, but she sent me over a big box of her astrology books for me to read and said, I'm passing the baton on to you. And so under her mentorship, and then in the end, she said, stop calling me a mentor, you're a peer now. Under that, and then I also studied evolutionary astrology as well, which really puts the focus on the soul's journey, on the karmic blueprint that we all come into this life with. So that's been intensive study as well. Don't need to study tarot so much, but astrology I just got drawn to because in any chart you can see it's like a big jigsaw, and you can put the pieces of the puzzle in to see the full picture. It's amazing. It's an amazing esoteric science, astrology. Yeah.
Yeah, it is basically a science all by itself. I've never personally been able to latch onto that type of thing. I'm starting just to learn tarot myself now a little bit, but I haven't got into astrology too much yet. What will you say to somebody that's kind of interested in all these different types of sciences? Like, how would you say for someone to pick what's right for them?
I think you've got to go with your gut feelings. So you've had a gut feeling to study tarot, and that's where now I've just drawn the Two of Cups. So connecting with others, that's going to give you an opportunity to do that in some way. So you've got to go with your gut feeling, and it's all about this getting forward movement, isn't it? So and getting that information for you, keeping the wheel of fortune, the Jupiter expansion. So I would say that's why you're leaning towards studying tarot. You see this as an expansion of a way of gaining more information and using that to move forward with what you're doing, and you would, because you've chosen to do that, you listen to your gut feeling. It is absolutely the right way to go. For me, I went toward mediumship because of my clairvoyance, to try and make sense out of the images I was getting. And so I've done readings for others where I will be given a piece of evidence. I do focus on evidentiary mediumship. I'd be given a piece of evidence, an image or a phrase to interpret. And that way people know that we've actually got one of their passed over loved ones. I needed to learn about evidentiary mediumship to give my clairvoyance some kind of structure, because otherwise it was, but by the same token, I'm also, I don't believe in, when it comes to psychic talents, or psychic gifts or psychic study, I don't believe in putting so many barriers around that you're going to stifle exploration. So I know I'm not, I guess I'm answering your question insofar as, yes, you have to listen to your gut, but you also have to be prepared to become an explorer as well. And, if those two things exist, you're going to do a lot of learning and a lot of finding. It's like going on a bit of a treasure hunt, really. You find these most magical things there.
Yeah, I think that's a lot about what this show is about as well. Like HauntingLIVE is about connecting, making connections, and bringing people's craft together, like what they do forward. So, I really wanted to bring forward what people do, because a lot of people do the same thing, but just in their own way. So I wanted to sort of bring that forward and showcase, we're all in this together, but we might have different ways of going about it. So sort of the same thing. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I've not recently, well, probably in the last 6 months or so, started looking at paranormal investigators. The reason that I do that is because I've actually had EPVs on my Patreon channel. I've been doing a reading. One pretty poignant one was I was telling my viewers about a friend who took his own life, and he was a very close friend of mine. And I said to them, one of the things I regret is I didn't have a chance to say goodbye to him. And the EPV, I wound up the video. The EPV came over the recording as goodbye. So so that was my friend who was there, allowing me to say goodbye, acknowledging that I was actually saying goodbye. So there's a lot of not just for entertainment value, but with paranormal exploration, it's about bringing the outer realms closer to us in whatever way you choose to do so.
Well, that's one thing I did want to ask you here today as well is you have some mediumship abilities yourself, you were saying. So have you ever encountered any type of spirit? I think you mentioned something recently about an encounter that you had.
Yeah, I see when I see, because there's a couple of ways of seeing spirit. You can do so clairvoyantly. What you can also see physical mediumship. And what I see is, I'll be sitting reading something on the news or something like that on my iPad or doing something like that. Suddenly I will know somebody's walked into the room and I'll know where they are. So I will look up, and what I see is I see spirit energetically at this time anyway. So I will see like a heat wave, what you could imagine to be. I'll see the energy there and manifesting. And then I will also see orbs. So one of the reasons people come to my channel, I'm sort of known as the orb lady. But those orbs I see all the time. Now, what are orbs? Orbs are spirit, one way or another. They are the way that spirit will manifest in an energetic form. So those orbs have been becoming bigger for me off video screen in my daily life. And I do feel that it won't be too long away before I actually see it's like they're starting to form in front of me, but you've got to get your vibration high enough for them to come through, because they don't do that in isolation on their own. They need you to do that as well. And so, the way I see spirit is physically. Then I have to go into clairvoyant images to say, well, who is this? And then I'll get an answer. So at this point of time, I'm seeing like a vapor, like energies around around me. So when I walk into a house, I can see that as well. So that's good. And then I get a clairsentience or a clairaudience or a clairvoyance about who is this? What is this energy? Who is it?
That's cool. Then are you able to communicate with the energy as well? Like, can you interact with the energy?
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because you would think that it would be a very formal interaction, but there is an older man in this house that I live in. It's a very old house. And he often is around me in my dining room, and he's got a great sense of humor. And so I often find myself smiling. He often laughs or not pokes fun, that's not the right word, but there is a smile when when I become if I become fearful of what I'm seeing and picking up, he will just laugh as if to say, don't be frightened. This is pretty normal. So I think that one of the reasons I wanted to come on today was to say that we shouldn't be frightened of seeing, hearing, sensing, because a lot of people will sense spirit and they don't know what they're sensing. Don't be fearful. It's very normal.
Yeah, I think it's very normal, but so many people are just so naturally closed off to it that they don't know what to do with it, right?
That's true, and their fear closes them off. The fear will stop. Fear is a contraction, not an expansion, and I had to learn that. Very. I don't know. That was one of the biggest lessons to learn to live with the upper realms. Was to manage my fear.
Okay, then I'll ask this next question. Was there something that you were afraid of when you were getting into the field?
Yeah, there's something. No, not when I understood this was what I had to do, and then make sense out of what was always there that I had been blocking. I lost a lot of my fear. Sometimes, as a child, I was always very frightened of the dark. And so that plays into the fear as well. I still don't like not being able to see where I'm going. And so if I was put into a darkened, haunted house, that'd probably make me a little bit edgy. But there again, I do a lot of protection before I even walk into anything. Before all of my videos, I run through a series of steps, and so that I know then that everything is going to be okay because I've done that protective work. I think if you're barreling in with into areas you don't know about, you're not doing the protection. You're allowing your fear to really drive you forward. I think you can have some unpleasant experiences.
Yeah, it's always good to protect yourself, even if it's something simple as, like you say, just doing a quick reading on a video. It's because you never know what energies are going to come into your area that you're working with when you're working with spirits. So, anyways, is there anything else that you'd like to talk about today before we let you go?
No, just to say that I do admire the paranormal explorers. I think that's another way of highlighting that there is more than what we can actually see in this world, and the unseen we should be learning about. Absolutely, we should be learning about. But no fear. Go into it without any fear. Know that you're protected. Your loved ones are always around you and they will protect you if you acknowledge them and ask for that protection. I've just built a new website. People can head over to www.revealinglighttarot.com and have a look at the new website. I run a blog over there, and so I use that writing that I was trained for. I use that writing there to write a blog, probably not as often as I should, but you can subscribe to the blog, have a look around my website. The other thing I did last year, I think it was last year, is I developed a Revealing Light Oracle deck. That details of that are on my website as well. That's very much a oracle for the soul's journey. And so head over there. There's a video that tells you all about it. Other than that, keep exploring. That's what I would say.
Yeah, and keep doing it safely as well. So that's number one, is always do things safely and make sure you're safe at all times. So, well, thank you, Marianne, so much. I appreciate you coming on HauntingLIVE podcast this week. It was a pleasure to meet you. I'm a big follower of yours. I check out almost every video that you put up, and we'll continue to do so. And I recommend that people check you out as well. So,
thanks so much, Trevor. Lovely to talk today.
Yes, you too. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Life's crazy. I don't like it in here.
Hey, what's the matter with you?
Where did you go?
going on around you?